Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni miliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Blythe Russo. She's here to celebrate Sloth Sleeps Over. Before we invite Blythe into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Cloud Monsters. We want you to experience Cloud Monsters, a science fiction suspense story for kids written by Francine Piriano Davila. Cloud Monsters follows a family trying to escape monsters that morphed from clouds and invade the Earth. Are these monsters evil or good? Kids will have a fun time guessing right up until the very end. Middle grade kids are going to love this action-packed thriller with twists and turns and an ending that no one would expect. Cloud Monsters is available through Amazon and at other online platforms. Get your copy today. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. The hilarious new book by Stephen Joseph. Out of a world where crankiness reigns and cars run on sauerkraut comes a new invention, the Snootermobile, the brainchild of Herbie Snoodleman. Now cars are powered by noodles, and the delicious aroma produced fills everyone with happiness. Except one person does not appreciate the success of Mr. Snooterman's invention, Sour Cruderman, the brains behind the once popular Krautmobile. But when Cruderman decides to seek revenge on his business rival, the unexpected happens. After all, when cars run on noodles, anything is possible. The newest tale by author Stephen Joseph invites readers of all ages to enter a world where imagination is king and even the crankiest person can find happiness. Get your copy today. Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. Join us right now from right outside of Cincinnati in the wonderful state of Ohio. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut picture book, the first book that she has illustrated and written. The name of the book is Sloth Sleeps Over. Please welcome to the show, Blythe Russo. Hey, Blythe, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today? Thank you for having me.
I'm wonderful. I have to tell you, I love sloths. My beautiful wife and I have done some exploring of Central America, and we have encountered sloths in a zoo and in a sanctuary and in the wild. And they're pretty cool.
They're amazing animals. I haven't, that's on my bucket list. I would love to go to Costa Rica. There's a sloth sanctuary down there that I would love to visit. But right now you went, that's the one? Oh my God. So jealous.
It is, it's on the Atlantic coast, not too far away from the city of Limon. Mm-hmm. And that sanctuary is just amazing. They're doing so many amazing things, and you learn so much. There's a 2-toed sloth and a 3-toed, and one has 2 or 3 stomachs, and the other one has a different number. And and we met at that time. We met a sloth who had fallen on the electrical wires and was injured, and they were bringing him back. And there was another sloth there who somebody had as a pet, which sloths are not good pets. And they trimmed their nails, which is a terrible thing to do for a sloth. And so we learned so much. And then we took a little cruise. There's a little river, and we saw sloths out in the wild and saw some caimans in the water next to us and all these little crabs. It was just a magical adventure. And here I am rambling about a sanctuary, and we need to talk about Sloth Sleep
Oh,
Over.
listen, you're just solidifying my desire to go faster, so it's perfect.
Well, it is a beautiful place. Costa Rica is a beautiful place. Limon, we had a wonderful time. Limon has a kind of a bad reputation, but we went to this wonderful restaurant called the Taylor Family Restaurant, had the most delicious meal there. And right before you get into Limon, there's a banana plantation. Mm-hmm. And I've seen corn, farms with corns as far as the eye can see. I've never seen a plantation with bananas as far as the eye can see. And it was just such a different world.
For sure. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So you haven't encountered a sloth in the wild yet. What inspired you to write Sloth Sleeps Over?
I just identify strongly with sloths. It all started with a sketch, which I do identify more as an illustrator. Mm-hmm. You mentioned this is my first book I've written, but so I one day, I don't know what comes out of my brain sometimes. It just let it happen. And I drew a picture of this giant sloth in a pajama onesie, and I was like, yes, I don't know what their story is, but I need to figure it out, because that's kind of one of those things where I was like, I love this character, let's explore some more. And so that was it. And also, sloths and giraffes are my top two fave animals. So one day I'll do giraffe, but for now it's like, I identify with the lackadaisical nature of sloths for sure.
Well, maybe you can create a book where Sloth is climbing up the giraffe neck and kind of hangs out there, and only comes down once a month to pee.
Isn't that the funnest fact? I love that so much.
It really was. I'm thinking, nah, I don't want to think about that. So tell us the story of Sloth Sleeps Over, please.
Well, Sloth is just a big old kid, and she has been invited to her very first sleepover. And at least my childhood, sleepovers were a very big event. Had a lot of them, almost, elementary school, more or less every single one of my friends' birthday parties was a sort of slumber party. So she's been invited. She has no idea what a sleepover entails, but she assumes that since sleeping is in the name, she is an excellent sleeper. So she is stoked for this sleepover with her friend Paloma. Unfortunately, when she gets there, she finds out that her and her friend Paloma have different expectations for their evening, and Paloma expects them to stay up all night long, because with sleepovers, there's no schedule. It's just fun for as long as everyone can stay awake, and kind of turns Sloth's world a little bit upside down. And she's a good trooper throughout the whole thing, but ultimately she's having a little trouble staying awake, and antics ensue, and just her trying to figure out how to stay awake for the cause of her friendship and not to ruin the sleepover.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm looking, you've such a big, radiant smile as you're talking about Sloth, and you're talking about, her wanting to kind of do this for her friendships. And I just know that family's going to love sitting down and reading this book together.
Yeah, I don't know. I know it's been kind of marketed a little bit as a bedtime story. Don't know how well it's going to help lull any kids to sleep, because I'm hoping there's a little bit more giggles in it, because it's just fun. It's kind of exploring things that go wrong, which is life, Mm-hmm. So I think it's fun, and being a kid at sleepovers, and there's no parents around, so you kind of felt a little wild and free and not tethered to anything. And it does cover a little bit of Sloth's anxiety with new things and not sleeping at her house and worried about kind of ruining anyone else's night. But I think overall you might have to read 2 books that night if you read it, but it's an anytime book. It's an anytime book.
Or
so
you can read Sloth Sleeps Over twice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Get the giggles out and then go to bed.
Yeah. I'm wondering the transition from being an illustrator to being an author illustrator. Did your agent need some convincing that, hey, I want to do this author thing too?
That was when I signed on, my agent Molly, who's brilliant and wonderful. I kind of signed on with the intention of I'm going to start as an illustrator, but also practice and I would like to work up to writing, and I like doing both. There's different challenges with both, but I feel like she might have tried to convince me a little bit more, a little imposter syndrome, or the confidence boost of feeling much more comfortable in the illustration space. And writing is just with words instead of illustrating is just telling a story with pictures. So it's kind of 2 sides of the same coin. But the confidence level was different. So maybe she was convincing me a little bit more. She's like, I think it's time. And I was like, is it? So, but it worked. It worked out.
That's
great.
Awesome. Do you think that you mentioned that this was the time. Do you think if you'd waited a year or 2 or 3, you might have gotten to the point where it's like, nah, I could have crossed that bridge a while ago. I'm going to stay here in the illustration lane?
I think it's always something. Eventually I was going to always do it. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of when I came up with the character of Sloth in 2016, and then I sold this in 2020. So it took a little bit while. I worked on other things, but that's how stories are made. You always sometimes they take a little while, and you can just have them in the back of your head, developing and inch by inch. But I think that's always a goal that I wanted to have, is tell my own stories. I love illustrating other people's stories, but I also always felt like I had my own to tell. So no matter when it was going to happen, it was going to happen. It just didn't. This one happened, a couple of years ago. So.
Yeah. Now, did you always dream of being an illustrator for children's books?
It was one of those things where I'm still a bookworm. I was always a bookworm. And it's one of those things where you're not sure it's a job until one day you were like, oh, that's a job that people have. So, I always wanted to do animate. I wanted to be a fashion designer for a little bit. I wanted to be in animation, for a little bit. And then when I went to school, something clicked. They're like, oh, you can do illustration. I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do. And then I just, feel a bond to children's illustrations. I just think that's the best, outlet for what I connect with most is writing for young kids.
Yeah. I've spoken to people in animations, both on the podcast and socially, and it's amazing what can be done with special effects and computers. But one of the things it kind of blew me away was in talking to this one special effects person in the movies, and they worked on one of the superhero movies that my niece and I had just seen. And so we sat down, and this person told us that for this one particular scene that was maybe 5 or 10 seconds long, they worked on it for 2 weeks. And I think my head would explode working on details. There are some people who just detail kind of and zoom, and anybody listening to this show knows that I have a very short attention span.
Well, also, I grew up at the tail end of hand-drawn animation, and it was slowly moving into computer, and I wanted to do hand-drawn. Now, once I realized also the amount of drawing it takes. I was like, I don't think I have the patience, or I was like, I might need a new hand much quicker than I'm going to anyway, stretch. But yeah, that was, and knew I didn't want to do computer animation. I liked the drawing part, so it was quickly. I quickly realized it was not for me, but I love people who do it because they're so methodical and detail oriented, and it's amazing to watch. But I will stick to non-moving images, which is great.
Hey, did you have a favorite animated character as you were growing up?
I feel like this is a lot of people. I love Belle because she read. That was like literally the base. I'm like, Belle loves books and she has brown hair. I have brown hair and I love books, so it's obviously perfect.
There you go. I was a Bugs Bunny fan myself.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I also really like Gossamer, the like large red monster and Looney Tunes that was always giving Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck grief. Mm-hmm. Don't know why, but he was great.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that so many of these illustrated characters are we use the term in podcasting evergreen. They're just evergreen. Bugs Bunny is Bugs Bunny forever, and Gossamer is Gossamer forever, and Belle is Belle forever, and they're much more, I think, long-lasting and enduring, I think, than a lot of characters that are portrayed by humans in films.
Yeah, they're much more iconic, but I think there's so many, and that's a whole nother podcast just talking about animation techniques and character design and like the amount of theory and effort that people learn to like shape design and silhouette and what makes it visually appealing character, but also the writing and the voice acting that brings these characters life. But even in books, there's characters who have series, and there's a reason why that kids like them, and that there's I like Arthur, Pete the Cat, Eloise, Olivia. All of them are just, if you just made them a black shape, you could identify their silhouette just because they're very iconic. And I think that is why they are evergreen characters, because they're appealing in personality and visually.
Yeah. You mentioned series. Is that something that you're hoping to do with Sloth?
I would love to do more Sloth books. There's only so much I can control with that. It's a sales thing, which is fun, it's a business. But yeah, if they would let me make more Sloth books, I will happily. I'm happy to explore more with Sloth and Paloma, because I love them so much.
So it sounds like, in addition to loving those two characters, it sounds like you love the author inside you a little bit more than you did at the beginning of the process. It's
nice to know it's once having a final finished project, you get a little bit more of that boost. You're like, I did it. It's not like I can do it. Now it's past tense, and you're like, if I can do one, that means you have proof. I have proof that I could do it. I did it. And theoretically, I can do it again.
I'm not going to ask you to name a favorite book that you've illustrated, because it's like asking someone to name their favorite kid. But is there a favorite character that you enjoyed illustrating, a particular character from one of those books?
Besides Sloth, I have my first book that I illustrated was a board book, One More Wheel, and there's a beaver character and a alligator character that were just so fun to draw, because the whole it's a counting book with vehicles, and the whole point is every spread there you add a wheel, so it's one wheel, two wheels, and they're surprising, but it's just the characters are friends, so they're just, you can see how I got to illustrate how much fun they were having playing this game of adding wheels every time. So yeah, they were super. Character design's my favorite part of the process, so I just like drawing cute, fun characters, and usually animal characters. They're just like, you can play a little bit more with proportions and stuff like that, which I enjoy.
You know, as I'm looking at your website and I'm looking at the different characters that you've created, the characters are really fun, but the illustrations, what I'm just feeling as I look at the illustrations, I'm feeling action. There seems to be a lot of energy in all of your illustrations. Is that something that just happens naturally, or is it something that is part of your personality?
I mean, thank you very much for the compliment. But yeah, I like showing movement and expression. I think those are two things that if I strive for in my illustrations, even if there's not a whole lot of physical action, I try to show a lot of facial emotion and just allow the reader to connect, because they are static images. So I want to get the most out of like a spread, especially with picture books. There's only so much real estate you have to express, and so I do like to show kind of the extremes. And I grew up with Calvin and Hobbes, and I always remember my favorite panels when they're dancing, and they're just like poses, but it shows movement and motion so well just in those poses. So that's kind of that's my goal when I'm doing anything with a lot of movement, is to be able to express that in a one pose or a static image.
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the images on your website, and it's of a tiger, I think, with a cup of tea, and it's a very kind of tranquil scene. But even in this, tiger sniffing a warm cup of tea or soup, or in trying to warm up, there's just that one spread is communicating so much, and it looks like just simple little things. The expression, the way the tiger's shoulders are kind of hunched in. Are those we were talking about details earlier? Are those the kind of things that are in your mind, in your consciously thinking of, it's the tiger is cold, so I have to make sure he's kind of hunched, kind of curled in, keeping himself warm?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the illustrator's job, is to build that world. So it's just like whatever details you can add in an illustration to just amp up the atmosphere or the feeling that you're trying to get across, because you don't, you can't bank on having words that are describing, and in picture books, the words should not be telling you what's happening in the illustration. They should work together, but kind of on their own timeline, in their own path. They just work together. So if there's anything, just like little details that make things more realistic or real, it's that adding personality, and that I think can really make a difference. Like adding like a Band-Aid, or like with kids, sock missing. There's just little details that can add so much to a scene that the viewer might not immediately pick up, but unconsciously they'll kind of understand a character better or the story better through those details.
One of the things that we've been suggesting to parents is, especially parents who are out there complaining, my kid wants me to read this book for the 500th time. And I try to remind them that, yes, you're reading the book 500 times, but you don't have to read it in the same way. And one of the ways that we encourage families to experience books is by taking a picture walk. You can even go so far as to cover the words, but just walk through the book, and especially before you read the text, imagine what's going on. And your illustrations are perfect for that picture walk, because there's so much going on. Like you said, there might be a sock missing, or like the tiger is, kind of curled up, and so what's going on in that picture? What do you think? Is it cold? Is it warm? And, all that kind of stuff. And that's so much fun. There's a young illustrator that I know listens to the podcast, and I think she's very talented. What advice would you give to her and to other young people who are hoping to one day illustrate children's books?
Do what you make work that you love. Draw things that are, if you love it, it will show. If any portfolio I've ever looked, you can point out the thing they had more fun. Any illustrator has had more fun. You can just tell in the illustration that they really enjoyed it, or just they draw it a lot. So do that. Like, you don't want to have things in your portfolio that you don't enjoy drawing, because 100% that will be the thing you have to draw. I didn't like drawing vehicles. I drew a vehicle. That was my first book I illustrated. So it's just going to happen. But yeah, draw what you love and it will shine through, and just keep going. This illustration is a journey and a trek, and like, there's a lot of, you have to put in the hard work and get to that point, because a lot of it is luck. But just keep on going and do what you love, because it, and it'll happen one day, and just keep on doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the best. Perseverance.
I think that's great advice. People also are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Sloth Sleeps Over and find out more about you.
All right. I am on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Blythe_Russo. I'm pretty active on both. I answer all DMs and stuff like that if you have any questions. I shouldn't be as active, but I really like social media. And my website is BlytheRussoIllustration.com. Links to Sloth Sleep Over are on my website, or you can Google it. Shop independent if you can. I will not be mad at you if you don't. Whatever's easiest for you. If you want to buy my book, I am happy to let you buy my book. So
that's wonderful. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author and illustrator of Sloth Sleeps Over, Blythe Russo. Hey, Blythe, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Cynthia Harmony. She'll be here to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Mi Ciudad Sings. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Blythe Russo. What a fun chat we had with her. Please be sure to check out Sloth Sleeps Over. That's from our guest, Blythe Russo. Also want to thank our sponsors, Cloud Monsters by Francine Piriano Davila. And, of course, we want to thank Stephen Joseph, the author of Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. My team deserves a big thank you. Rory Grady, Fatima Khan, Ashley Contouris, Nicole Belcastro. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.